Hey guys, Mike Ox here. I wanted to show you something real quick. A requirement came up on a project that I'm working on, and it involves portal web forms. And I've created a web form, and it took me a little bit of time to configure it correctly. And there's actually two other web forms that are very similar to the one that I created. And rather than trying to create them from scratch, I decided I was going to use CRM Snapshot from Cobalt to copy the web form, and I figured while I'm doing that, I'd do a recording of it and kind of give you a sense of what the capabilities of the tool are. So, as some background, CRM Snapshot from Cobalt is a free utility. It's completely workflow driven, so you can configure it to create copies of records. It can also create backups of records that can be restored. And it can not only create copies of individual records, but it can create copies of the records and their relationships as well. And there's some other cool stuff that you can actually do with the tool. I'm not going to get into. I'm going to create a very basic copy workflow using CRM Snapshot today, just to show how quickly you can set this up and how powerful the tool is. So you can download it from Cobalt's website. It's completely free. There's no adware or anything. There's a bunch of articles on there from me talking about it from when I worked at Cobalt. There's also some articles from Mallory Lawhorn, and who also worked on the project while I was there. And Aiden Cascella was another developer, another MVP that worked with me on this project. So there's quite a bit of documentation on how to do these things, but there hasn't been a lot lately. So I figured I'd do this real quick and kind of show off the abilities of the tool. So I've already installed it in this org that I'm working on right now, and you can see it up here, snapshot. So in order to configure this, in order to copy my web form, we'll just go over and take a look at my web form real quick that I created. It takes no time to install. It's just a solution. There's not much to it once you download it. I've got 4 steps in my web form here. I've also got some metadata that I've configured under the individual steps. So again, rather than putting these 2 windows side by side and having to set all this up manually, I figured it's easier to create a workflow in a couple of minutes and do it that way. So if we look, you can see we've got some metadata under here as well. All right, so to configure this, I'm going to go to settings, processes, and I'm going to create a new workflow. And this workflow is going to be copy web form, new workflow. It's going to run on the web form entity, and I'm going to run it synchronously, which is fine. You can run it asynchronously as well. All right, we want to run this as an on-demand process, so I can actually run it from the record itself. You can run it on multiple records as well if you wanted to copy multiple records at the same time, just like any standard workflow. So once you've installed CRM Snapshot, there will be a Cobalt Snapshot item under your add steps. We want the configurable clone. I won't get into what the rest of these are in this video, but we're going to pick the configurable clone. And this is the one that'll give us the ability to copy the record as well as its related records. And this is going to be copy the web form. The properties on this workflow action it requires a saved instruction. So I don't have any at this point, so I'm going to create a new one. And we'll call this, again, it's going to be copy web form. form. That's the name of our instruction. You have to pick you have to pick the entity that you want to start from. Web form is where we're starting from, and then that will populate this tree on the left hand side for the related records. So it'll show you all of the related records to a web form. In this case, we want to copy the web form metadata. We want to copy the web form steps, and we also want to copy the web form metadata associated with the step. So that's all we're interested in for this. The web form sessions is an instance of a web form that's been filled out. The start step we don't want to copy. And the one thing I did want to show, there's also this excluded fields on the right. So I'm going to specify that I don't want the start step to be copied as part of this. So you can specify which relationships you want to copy, but you can also specify which fields you don't want to copy. And that's important because the web form is going to have a start step that's associated with its steps, its child steps. In this case, we want that start step to be blank because we're going to have to fill it in ourselves. You can do some more complex workflows where you could exclude that and then and then fill it after the record's been created. I'm not going to get into how to do that in this video. This is just a straight, I want to copy it. I want to copy it quick. I want to get 90% of the information that I need for my new web form in place, and then I'll go in and tweak it, how I need to tweak it. So you can see up here the instructions. There's some JSON up here that's exposed, that's specifying what all this is how this is all configured. So if you want to dig into that, feel free. But for this, we're copying web form metadata, the web form itself, the steps, as well as the step metadata. So I can go ahead and go back to my workflow, and now we have copy web form instructions. I'll save and close that. And I can activate this. So that's all we need to do. That's the extent of configuring the workflow. And obviously you only need to configure that workflow once. Let me get back to our web form here. There we go. So you only need to configure that once, and then you can use it, multiple times in the future. And I'm going to go ahead and run that. Since it's running synchronously, it can take 30, 60 seconds to run. That actually ran pretty quick. So let's go back and see what we have now. So you'll see that it created a copy of the web form, and it appended the dash copy onto the end of it. It did leave our start step blank because we chose to exclude that. I can go in now and select the one I want. It's got all of our steps that have been copied, and if we save those changes and open up our first step, we can drill down into the metadata and actually see that the metadata was copied as well. There we go. So with all my talking and explaining, that took about 9 minutes, and I think setting it up all told probably took about 2 minutes, and running it took about 30 seconds. So much faster than trying to recreate these things yourself. Obviously I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to have to tweak this a little bit to make the modifications I need, but this is a much quicker and faster way to copy records inside of Dynamics. It's totally free. It works, and it's one of my favorite tools, despite the fact that I helped write it. So let me know what you think, and thank you guys for watching.